and obviously we couldn't take a power chair, so he had to take the manual chair. And this very kind older gentleman offered us a ride, take a power chair, so he had to take the manual chair. And this very kind older gentleman offered, and my mom said, "No, I can manage. We'll push him." And it turned out to be
In 2006, when I retired, it was about $7,500
Wow.
pupil cost.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, then I think I heard one of the Springfield school board members who signed the petition, or some person against the school board, said, what was it, that the school board was
I will call the city council work session to order at 6:01. Tammy, would you do roll call, please?
Yes, we have Mayor Bell,
Here?
Counselor Bowman,
Present.
Counselor Lehman,
here?
Counselor Engelbretson,
Here.
and Counselor Myers.
Here.
Counselor Wells and Counselor Smith are absent, and there is a quorum.
Thank you very much. So the work sessions, as we all recall, are intended for information gathering and staff presentations and preliminary discussions. Council does not take any formal or final action on it. So tonight we're going to discuss the learn more about the vegetation management and maintenance plan, the park maintenance options and review, and the capital improvement plan for 2027. Yes. So I will turn this over to our esteemed experts, subject matter experts.
All right, you got 1.5 of those at the table. That's the one, I'm the half. So thank you, Mayor, and Council tonight. Yeah, we talked, it hopefully is a pretty efficient session tonight. The first two items are sort of linked. The vegetation management and maintenance plan, we've referenced it before, I believe, in kind of in passing, that we were working on it kind of in the background. DeBeat, our rare intern that did work for us primarily with TMDL, our water quality work, we squeezed in kind of a side project to kind of start on the makings of this plan. So DeBeat put this document together. We've been sort of struggling to carve out time between Megan and Brian and I to really light the fire and get it from DeBeat's 50 to 60% document to a completed full presentable, ready for your acknowledgement. Really, it's not a policy document, it's a management and maintenance plan. So there isn't really a formal adoption necessary, but it definitely is important because I think it helps with a couple things. One is it really helps establish the expected levels of service, you know, what it takes to maintain the different lands that have vegetation on them that our Public Works Department manages. And it's quite it's quite varied. So we'll go through that a little bit. And then the other thing that it does is it helps us understand where we're best positioned to do that work ourselves, or possibly look at contracting certain elements out that might make sense depending upon their characteristics and their need and their uses. So and then it also has the ability to kind of be another stepping stone to some policies. It references some pesticide, you know, what kind of maintenance treatments are typically available to different categories of vegetation, which then I think will lead to somewhere during the calendar year as a separate conversation and a separate probably resolution, is a policy, a pesticide type policy that would be then referenced from this management and maintenance plan. So that's kind of some of the reasons why we felt it's valuable to have one. It also is just infusing what has been practically done in the past, you know, so it's not a big, you know, flipping over of what we do and how we do it. It's just organizing it, putting it in a format that we can be more analytical about, critical about, and then also match up expectations and resources. And that's really a big part of it. If we want to treat things at a higher level of maintenance, it's a higher level of resource. And so we have to discuss together, engage that. Process wise, we've talked about the vegetation management with the Park and Tree Committee as well. They haven't seen this draft yet. that will come kind of between now and the time it comes back to council. There'll be at least one formal session with the Park and Tree Committee to really dig in on that. And I hope they're excited to work on that. And
I should actually introduce our guest here tonight too. Maybe you all know Tom Beatty. Tom is the chairman of our Parks and Tree Committee. Chair, is that correct term? Okay. So thank you for being here. I know you have a vested interest in many of the things we're going to discuss tonight.
so so the process wise, they'll have a heavy, heavy role in reviewing what we put together and discussing kind of some of those recommendations then for what ends up being in the final management and maintenance plan that council will see. I don't have a firm target for when we'll bring it back to council, but I would hope it's before summer is the goal. And I think partly getting it on a council agenda of any type forces us to put it back at the top of our list. Once we set it on one of your agendas, then we have to do what we say we're going to do.
We'll set a hard date for you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can. Yeah, there you go. I didn't expect that, but that's fine. Yeah. So I don't know how much we want to go through it, but I wanted to just have it in your packet so you can peruse it and kind of see the concept and the skeleton of it. This was formatted. Eugene has a very kind of high octane version of this. They have robust, obviously with Ridgeline and they have so much more natural and open space areas in addition to formalized parks that this really, we're trying to slim down, but use the same concepts, but slim that down and not because we don't have that variety and that much volume of acreage and that many kind of regulatory. We have more regulatory than maybe people would think embedded in this, but not quite to the extent and not really the ecosystem species protection stuff. But we have wetland, we have Trails End, we have our bioswales. We have quite a bit of things that really require different treatments and a different maintenance schedules and what to watch out for. So we thought it was, while our system is much, much smaller, we thought it was still really relevant in a good document to work from. So it goes through kind of some definitions and some guidance and really some good education. And we have a lot of work to do on this document. I think we've decided it's about a 50% document, just to keep in mind. It gets us a framework. The front half just goes through kind of defining what the various kind of natural ecosystem categories are, and then what our systems kind of generally fall into. And so it's kind of a funnel. It starts to say, here's what these are, here's what our systems are. And then we get more granular as we go about what kind of management, what objectives of each area are, what do we trying to accomplish? What are the strategies, prevention, monitoring, controls, and maintenance, and mechanical controls, biological controls, chemical, which of course gets to that eventual policy about what kind of chemicals in what areas either, are we willing to have happen in our public lands. And then there's some implementation schedules. So that the first pages, probably the square packet pages numbers, 7 through 11 are that's an example of what would be a full build out of each of our areas. You would have these categories for every one of our general treatment facilities. The next section, starting on page 12, is an attempt to give some sort of measurement of what the resource allocation, what the staff time is, and by category of what we do. And it does need some more build out. This was a starter kit of how much time do we invest in each of these parks and in what categories. And so that will get much more fine tuned as well. But we've started them for each of the main parks. So that's the next few pages through Spores, Trails End, and then and Booth Kelly. And then the second, starting on page 19 is kind of, I guess, the appendices or the lists that feed this. And it breaks down all the areas that we have. We have right-of-way areas. And so these come and go based on how much neighbors, the abutting property owner, they may actually maintain. And if they move or sell and another person moves in, they may not maintain it. And then that falls to us. So it's always in the right-of-way category, it's always pretty variable about what I'm sure over your tenure, you've seen lots of areas come and go in terms of what you have to actively manage. And some are formal landscaped, some are just seasonal stuff, but we're trying to quantify kind of the total list of the areas that we touch with any frequency in terms of vegetation. So 22 then starts on the formal parks. And again, some of the data about what we do, what equipment we use, how much time we estimate that we put in, and really the peak date ranges that we do that work in. And keep in mind that trash is included in here, but really the full facilities maintenance part of restrooms, active playground equipment, the pavilion structure, the picnic structure at Norma is really a different category. We're talking about vegetation, kind of all the living stuff primarily, and then trash from use of the park. Then the next category is trails and paths. And then starting on 26 is really a guide of our parks that is partly taken from the master plan, just as a reference to say, here's what each of these parks are, the levels of use, what facilities are in them. So kind of an inventory.
We've not had this before. Is that correct?
Not, I don't think formally. I think, yeah, I think that really is the idea, is to take what we do have is a great master plan.
Right.
And then infuse the stuff that is either in Brian's head or on whiteboards or in the work order system, a combination of what basically is in the realm of public works, and kind of fuse all that together and try to get a little more analytical about it. To see, and really, like I said, the idea, and we'll get to that on the second item on the agenda, is to look at what are we best suited to maintain ourselves, and where are there maybe opportunities that are more cost effective while we still control the quality and the performance of to possibly contract out. And I think this helps us figure out what do we do most often, and what is it that is really basic versus more custom for our team. We talked about irrigation. We run a water system, so we're pretty good at irrigation also, that's in our wheelhouse. But some other tasks either may not be in our wheelhouse, or they're done so occasionally that it's not very effective for us to have the equipment that's necessary to do it and maintain that equipment. Or it's pretty rudimentary and is out there in the marketplace, cheaper than what we want our team, we want to maintain their being more and more specialized on our public works systems than having their time taken up doing something that we can get pretty easily out in the marketplace. So that's another reason for having it. So it tries to pull a bunch of different things together, and it is management and maintenance plan is really the focus. So it's not really, mostly not a policy document. The part that really is more of a I think of interest to council is the analytical tool of it, but also that expectations and resources. And as we dial these expectations down, of course, the resources can be, go down with that. And so there's, matching up with community surveys and community, values and council values. And then ultimately this is an asset. It's like a piece of, it's an infrastructure, right? It's a category of our infrastructure. And if we don't do anything to it, it degrades just like any other, our pipes are, we have a certain level where, we can talk about in here that here's the minimum, the threshold to actually keep this, keep things alive and not dying and having it be just vacant lands. So it has a lot of different uses at the council level, at the park and tree committee level, and at the operational level. And so I think each of those three main recipients or users of this document will have different use for it. that's probably it. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add on that. It's really, like we say, there's a lot of room left to fill in and organize. But we feel good that, the DeBeat was able to launch this for us and get a framework started.
Counselor Lehman.
Well, the last time I remember we had conversation about the parks having to do with the weed maintenance. We had Brian on this side of the table saying no Roundup. And we had Adam kind of on this side of the table saying, well, we need to talk about that because we have to manage our resources. Where did that conversation end up at?
Same spot.
Use of Roundup.
But I think I would characterize it as much more alignment.
Yeah.
The idea of we need to talk about it is, just that, the resource part, right? Because, and then it matches up, then it feeds into the conversation of the aesthetic. I think the example I gave was from my prior community where, did a no pesticide policy, pretty hardcore, no pesticide, universally, I think pretty universally, agreed upon by council, their parks commission, staff, the community. What quickly, showed up in 6 to 12 months was, wow, those chemicals were performing quite a function and there was weeds everywhere, and people didn't like the aesthetics of what happened. And then it turned into, the solution there, or at least the attempted solution, was a formal volunteer coordinator position to look at how do you get, really what we do here on steroids, a really macro work party stuff to pull weeds. So then it got back to council, and I've seen this from a distance in other communities as well. I just have one particular city that I have a pretty deep insights into is then you look at that pesticide plan and say, well, full on ban prohibition. We now see that may not be the best, especially when you're talking about performance fields like a baseball field. That was an interesting one from the Booster Club, and the high school actually leased city lands that were saying no pesticides on, and it made the inner part of the diamond a little rough, a lot of weeds. But then looking at selective, and so swinging the pendulum back to, okay, if that is needed or if that is desired for a certain outcome, how do we do it? How much do we do? Who does it? Is it done internally or is it done only contract? There's some liability issues and certifications and all those kind of things. So a lot more to come still. This I think will inform that conversation because it'll help us decide or be able to queue up to council, to Park and Tree first and council, about what areas we think are going to be the most challenging if we don't use any pesticides. And what are the options? Do we change the landscape design, and say, hey, why fight it? Do something that actually doesn't require either, not pulling weeds or spraying. There are different landscape designs that lessen that. And we can do some test stuff and all of that. So yeah, I think it's a important part of this, but it still is just, it is one component, one tool.
In the past year, have we been using pesticides?
We used it one time at Johnny Diamond for and had it done by contract rather than staff. I think that was something I was particularly, I had a couple different reasons, but we were both on the same page with that. And it was,
Close the park.
yeah, we
Right,
noticed, you
remember.
provide the notice, you close the park before, after, all that. And it has a time period by which it, dissipates and all that. So we did that and provided notice. It's a big deal to use them. So we've done nearly none. We've tested another product, very select testings, most of it well out of the public areas. We have a lot of areas that the public don't go in that could probably benefit. I mean, would be efficient to spray. I'm not sure it would be good to spray, but it'd be efficient.
It's really hard though. I mean, most of us grew up when remember, oh, Roundup is totally safe, totally safe. You don't worry about it. We spray it everywhere. Well, recent studies have come up with exactly what Brian and Adam are saying. It's not totally safe. And And it's not totally safe for those people using that area, and it certainly isn't safe for the people applying it.
Yeah,
So
as
you
an
have to
employer,
be
I, there's extra concerns we have as employers. Yeah.
So your common weed and feed, is that considered a pesticide?
Weed and feed? No, no, no. I think that mainly what we were concerned about was the glyphosate spray. And trying to find a product that was glyphosate free. And that lessens the impact of, the cancer causing agents that are in glyphosate.
A weed and feed would be a good preventative for.
Yeah, and we have used weed and feed in the parks in the past. I can't remember if I think we did last spring. We put some spring blend in the parks. And then we normally would do an application in the fall as well.
So what this will end up showing is, it'll be an easy way to look through the park system and the right-of-way system, and we will be listing, where we have, where there's opportunities, where pesticides may have been used in the past or may have a role as a potential tool, and we can talk about, are we going to use that tool or not? And then what are the offsets to that? What may happen, and what are the other options?
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't use weed and feed with grass, right? Because that kills everything.
You mean Roundup?
Roundup, yeah.
Yes. Yep. Unless you want to kill the grass.
Mhm.
I mean, people do that.
It's a pretty broad brush.
Yeah, it is a big brush.
So it'd be in bark dust areas and
Yeah.
gravel
Planters,
areas.
yeah.
Potentially, and the other side, you have temperature requirements, you have wind, you have all these things that can go wrong, besides the core public health issues and the noticing and people that have, that are more, more prone to, to issues, right? More susceptible, I suppose. And then there's a lot wrapped up in it. And I think this will help us bring the data to the table to have that conversation and figure out what our policy should be.
Well, I think that it's certainly overdue to have a vegetation management sort of framework, because just from my own independent observation, that's one of those things that certainly doesn't stop.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I constantly see people out doing just minor or moderate vegetation management, and really that's any time of year. It's just not the springtime. So I certainly support this, and the herbicide conversation is always a difficult one for many reasons, and it might be worth looking at some more natural herbicides. I have a master gardener in the family, so I can certainly ask if they have any recommendations, because that's really not my strong suit.
Yeah. And, when we get to that point, we'll bring pesticide policies from other cities. There's a lot of municipalities that are, well along the path of research and of testing, applied testing of some of these that, they may, a lot of products are safer. Then the question is the expense worth what they actually accomplish? And they tend to not work as well. That's the bad part about it. I mean, that's the trade-off. Yeah, Roundup and Crossbow, they work, right?
yes, they work.
And these other ones that are, that are, you have to apply them more frequently. You have to, and then you talk about the labor. Is the labor even worth it then for the purchase and the labor to applicate and all that? So a lot of things in the matrix for that. And I think it is a really important conversation. And again, I expect that this will build the background and the backing for that conversation. Trying to think if there's anything else particular with the vegetation management. I guess the thing that at a big level, from a community level for this document, it really does show quite a huge variety, both a variety and as Councilor Bowman said, a lot of time spent. Vegetation is not just an extra around the sides part of Public Works work. And so that is important when we're looking at budgets, we're looking at resources, and we're looking at having a team that is certified in water and wastewater systems. You know, it really does kind of pull them away from those core things that we need to really run our water system, our wastewater, and now our stormwater systems, and our street systems, signs and striping and asphalt and patching. You know, this is an area that isn't in the day-to-day workings, it's not an afterthought. It's a lot. There's a lot of volume, as Councilor Bowman said. So I think it's important for us to really know what the categories of work are, what our options are, and really, we want to make sure that what decisions we're making match up with what the community is wanting, what council is wanting the community for the dollars.
Yeah, if it was left up to me, I'd leave all of the fallen leaves and put them on the beds and rather than bark dusting everything. But aesthetically, I know that is not pleasing for some people, but it is very good for our environment and it is very good for our natural species.
I've got some leaves for you.
I have plenty of leaves. If you will walk by my front yard, you will notice I have not picked up a single leaf.
And that's it.
Or will I until it warms up and the bugs have come out.
No leaf unturned.
That's right. No leaf unturned. That we find ladybugs, we find praying mantis, we find butterfly larvae. There's all kinds of things that live in what we consider a mess.
Mhm.
So if it were up to me, we would do that everywhere. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever side you're on, it's not up to me.
Yeah,
It will be a group decision.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that are kind of near that level of, you know, in here of management and maintenance is how, when we cut grass, when do we mulch it and when do we take it away? And there's some best practices from health of the grass, and then there's the user experience, then there's the aesthetic. So there's layers to all of these. And you know, it's, you know, the whole, how far do we want to get in the weeds? You know, is really, you know, that's what this helps us
Yes.
get organized about. So when we are talking about that, we're not talking as anecdotally, maybe as we would without this document. We have some stuff to go by.
It certainly is a great inventory
Yeah.
and a reminder of all of the things. And we are very fortunate between our Public Works Department and our Park and Tree Committee that we have expert opinions on many of these things that can really help guide us.
Yep. So that'll segue maybe just into the second agenda item is really relatively small. It goes right from this is looking at this upcoming vegetation season with the decision last year to go from 6 FTE to 5 FTE in our Public Works Department. We budgeted in the current year that we're in for some temp help. So it was 5 FTE with a little bit of temp help in the summer, precisely for vegetation. We had mixed success with that. One of the people that we got was awesome, and he was so awesome he got hired by another city. So we got a lot done in that short period, but it didn't really work for the entire season. And what we want to try out, I don't think that's a bad thing to look at again in the next season, but what we're wanting to do and wanted to just, it's something we plan to do. We can not if council doesn't want to, but it isn't it isn't a decision at all, is just to go out to bid for what the industry term is mow and blow, right? Just mowing and trim, weed eating, and then maybe do a bid for that for our irrigated grass parks, not for the total inventory that's in this management plan, but just to take that subset, which is pretty standard out in the market, to say we can develop, you know, in certain, you know, these months, it needs to be done every 7 days. In these months, it's every 10 or every 14. And we put out a bid and they bid on, you know, basically it's an hours, you know, contract, and see what we get back. and see if it is more cost effective for that particular subset to enter into a contract with a private firm, and we manage the performance of the contract, which is, so there's no, it's not zero work for the city, but it's less. It likely, well, almost for sure, it wouldn't include restroom. There's still parks staff time, but this would take the bulk of that seasonally out. And we think it has the potential to be really cost effective. And what we're planning to do, and just wanted to run that by because we don't have an adopted vegetation management plan, is to kind of use this and build an RFP for for the 4 irrigated grass parks. So it would not include Trails End because it has a different treatment. I think that does, eventually we could do some add-ons if things go well with a contract. We could grow it, but the idea is really the basics and really see if that is a bid price that frees us up to handle the unique one-offs and continue having our team work on the higher level, more specialized stuff that we're training them for and that they're more suited to do. So the idea is in the next 30 to 45 days, develop a bid. It's intermediate procurement, we assume. So we'll run it as an intermediate, which is up to between 25 and 75,000. So we'll run that type of a procurement process and see what we get back for bids. And while it's likely that it will be under 75,000. So it's one that I could sign, but I think we'll, because it's new and different and it's a service level and it's more to it, we'll bring it to council, and obviously we'll run it through a Park and Tree as well, and see if that's what we want to do, because it's more than just a, contract dollar amount. It's a different, different way we're providing the services in the community. So that was, we just wanted to tag along and formally put that out there, that's our thought. If it comes out, well above what we would calculate it takes our staff to do it, then we would pass. We wouldn't, just we put a bid out doesn't mean we have to award it to the lowest bidder. We can say, no, thanks. And we know what the marketplace costs are for that. So that's our plan. And that'll show up back to council with the results, and then we can make a decision about whether we execute on that or not.
It makes sense to me, unless we put something out there and get bids back, we don't even know what we're talking about.
Yep. Yeah, we could be wildly optimistic about what we think is the price points are out there. Yeah. we might be just hopeful. Maybe we're not wildly optimistic, but
Pretty optimistic.
yeah. But it's it is pretty straightforward stuff. And if we can define in the bid, the bid document about what we're asking for and get real good on the bid, I think that's more than half the battle, is making sure we're clear about what we're asking for performance, and then see what, we've been kind of cold called every once in a while, like, hey, do you guys have anything going on? So there's a desire, and we'll just see what the costs are. We'll take a foray into that. So that's those 2 items. And then the third item is a discussion and kind of a preview of what will come on I think the March. Yes, I think it's the March council meeting for formal adoption. Every year in the spring pre-budget, we bring forward an update to the capital improvements plan, the CIP. And Brian and I have gone through the prior years, and each year what we're trying to do, a couple things. We're trying to refine it and have it be more realistic each year. What a CIP, I'll back up. What a CIP is, just as a refresher, it typically pulls the 5 years worth of projects that are listed in various master plans, and then catches some other things that aren't master plan related. But so it's a way of kind of organizing and doing some financial projections and forecasting for what's in these disparate master plans for our water system, or our wastewater system, or our street system, and then and our parks master plan. And it's so that's why we bring it, pre-budget. We bring it in the kind of the January, February range, and then get it adopted in March, and then whatever that is, we plug those project and those dollar amounts into the budget for that coming year. So what is in the packet is the adopted CIP from last year, the one that we're working in now. And then at the very end of that, the last page, I think of let me get to the packet. Yes, the very last page, page 69, is, nope.
I think I did it wrong. I think I
Nope.
did
Okay.
page 34, is it?
Okay, it's in the wrong order. Okay, no, it wasn't wrong. It's just,
To the first report.
There is.
There is,
oh, okay.
yeah. so, the vegetation management plan. I will proceed and.
We can just do copies of that. Okay, so what we'll hand you out, what's in your package now is on the very last page. It's on page 69 and 70, that's the adopted list that you adopted last year. So Brian and I, a little bit last month and then fine tuned it here a few weeks ago, went through all of these, talked with Branch to kind of get some general cost estimates, updates, and then really looked at what's the current reality? What have we got done? What can be removed off the list, which is always nice, always feels good. And then what is pending and what do we know now that we didn't know last year, that may change the order of things. And what we want to do tonight is to kind of briefly go through each of the categories, and talk to you about what we've done differently. One thing that we've done, and we're going to continue to fine tune this each year, is if a project splits fiscal years, if it's, in most do, and sometimes they're multiple years, they could be in 3 years, but at the very least, we want to split the years to show that, and show the engineering design work, usually in year one, that almost always takes almost all of that year, and then the next year show the actual construction costs. So of the big stuff, and that's usually of stuff that's in the, probably 500,000 plus range. In the stuff that's, under 3, we may or may not, we may not have any engineering to speak of, maybe pretty nominal, but just need one too. We have some for us.
What's that?
The updated one. She gave it back?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's something you'll see them repeated twice, but if you look at what year they're in, there'll be different dollar amounts. And then what will bring you in the narrative that goes along with this spreadsheet, when it's up for formal adoption, will be a description of those projects, that puts a little more context to the projects in this list. But I thought for tonight, just the focus would be on this list itself. And I'll pause before we just start ripping through the list. If there's any kind of general questions or asked before I go. And then Brian, of course, is here for all of the project details. He can talk these deeper than I can.
Except for the administration general government. That might be a tag team between.
Yeah. Want me to go ahead and step through them, just start through an administration? Okay, so administration and general government, really, these are sort of by fund. I'll just, the first two are the general fund.
We're on fiscal year 27 to 32
Correct.
planning. Okay.
Yep, correct.
Thank you.
The handout that Sammy just did. So, IT infrastructure, we left it in there. Some of those are really not capital. As a clump, they're capital. So we've left it in as a clump, and those are pretty routine. They're computer replacements. Not every year do we need our server is a year or two. I don't know, when it blows, it blows. And either we replace or go virtual. So that one is a little fuzzy in terms of true capital project, but it's enough of its own thing that we left it in here to keep track of. We've talked about City Hall, ADA, parking and access. You'll see that on there twice. One is coming up for design, and the other is for kind of what we hope and expect some level of construction improvements. Just as a note on that one, it's for the front entry. We do have legal ADA that was done, I don't know how many years ago, so this meeting room does meet ADA using this one, but our main front entry, it is not ADA compliant. So we meet a legal building code definition of ADA, but not so functional ADA. And that project would be the doors, the vestibule, the parking, and the entire access from parking to door. And it gets hard quick. It gets expensive quick when you talk about the sidewalk, the internal sidewalk, and the grade changes that are there. So we have some basic survey work done, and that's it at this point. So we did pay for some survey work.
So this 27 to 32 planning, capital improvements plan, has this been adopted or is this proposed?
This is proposed. So this formally will be on a future council meeting, I think a March meeting for formal approval by resolution.
Do you want to have, or should there be a line item towards potential of a new building?
Well, those are good questions, and that I have that down as a retreat conversation, because you're right. Some of this, we purposefully haven't moved forward on much of these projects because of that looming question of, is investing in this building in our best interest. So, I would say that for a CIP, sort of like budgeting, you want to put in stuff that is more likely than not to occur, 51-49 kind of thing. So the idea of a new city hall, I wouldn't know how to put a number to it.
Study.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that definitely could be done. I think we'll think about how we bring that forward to you. I think that's a good point, and maybe we can talk a little bit more at the retreat also that might inform it. The other part of administration and parks, these first two categories, is a conversation that we've been having and will continue to have, is general fund balance. We can put stuff down here that we think would be good to do, but if we don't have any money, I'm not sure we want to put it down until we know how we are going to pay for that. And if we are going to put it down in something in the next 1 or 2 years, something else gets bumped, and we have to have a conversation about what's the prioritization of what gets bumped. So that's another reason why, some of these things we've talked about but aren't on here. Some of these that are on here, I keep scooting them out. They were on here when I arrived, and they all, 3 of them, 4 relate to whether or not we stay in this building or not. So, last year, we put some stuff in the last 2 years, we put some items in and tagged a year to them, and we haven't spent a dime because we don't have general fund money to do it. So this category is probably the most theoretical of all of the categories because we just don't yet have a general fund balance that gives us the ability to have those conversations very well. But I think there's a place for a city hall conversation that we should have. And I'm not sure exactly what format, but if you're okay with that, give me a meeting and we'll figure out, and we'll talk about it more at the retreat too, about shaping that. Cause I think it's important. We have some security system integration, and that's not as much city. It sits here in general government. It's a little bit of tying it to our kind of the brains that are here, but it's really for all of our other facilities and having a centralized security kind of integrated system. And the asterisk there next to most of these portions of this would be part of our cost allocation plan and would be charged out to our various utilities. So if we're putting a system, security system in, like for the new well facility, most of that cost is borne by the water fund. Some might live here because if we have to upgrade the servers or the system that it's on, the core system, the general fund pays for a portion of that as well because it connects with our security here. So all of these have an asterisk that they probably have a portion that's paid with other funds, not purely general fund. The next category is parks. This one was fairly easy to update. We completed Pavilion, and again, this is 100% general fund. We don't have a whole lot of money, but what we have committed to next is what's listed here as Coburg Creek Park. It's the neighborhood park that we have the land deeded as part of the subdivision approval, and have actually had a starter kit work agenda items with Park and Tree about moving forward on the concept plan and the community engagement plan to actually come up with what are the amenities, what are the elements for that park. And we've gotten some bids on some basic grading, and it's actually more involved than you think to grade it right, to have the water come off it right, and have some soil in there, and possibly in this coming fiscal year that 50,000 would be a phase one, which would be real basic, but I think real welcomed, and give us the building blocks to work on that phase two after the community engagement. So parallel to kind of this phase one, 50,000, which may be able to be done a little bit less than that, would be the completion of the community engagement process to then gear up for the second year that is listed here for kind of the phase two, which would have irrigation, vegetation, walking paths, if that's whatever the elements are kind of desired once the community engagement process is complete. And the third item, Trails End, that was on there last year. We booted it out a year, and I think once you get past the first two, you see the same funding source, undetermined grants and SDCs. So those are really subject to finding money, which is not uncommon. That's how a lot of parks are developed. There are some that you can save money away and you wait 5, 6, 7 years and then you do one, or you search for grants that fit the situation that you have. So that's it may look like a bummer, but it's not too atypical.
A question on the Trails End. That strip of swale is part city of Coburg and county or private?
Trails End is at the one of North, it is the park at the end of North Industrial. So
No, I mean, one off Abbey Road.
Yeah, so that's a stormwater facility, and is part of the loop path. So what's your
The park? The park is part city of Coburg and part private or county?
No,
it's not a park. So it's not a part of our park system. It is part of our storm system. So it is a stormwater facility. We do some vegetation. It's in our vegetation plan because we do a lot of vegetation mowing. And then the loop path goes adjacent to it on the
Paved area.
Yeah,
Is the
the paved loop path, which is technically a transportation system more than a parks system.
So the one behind Abbey Road is,
the one behind Abbott Road is Booth Kelly,
okay, that's part city and part county or private?
private.
Okay.
Well, yeah, there's no county. The county part is what jurisdiction it's in. The county doesn't own anything in there. There's a city limits line about kind of midpoint of the swale is where the city limits line is. The city limits part, from the city limits line east is owned by the city, where the actual trail is. And then to the other bank of the dried swale is privately owned outside the city limits.
So back to the idea of the vegetation and the blackberries, do we work in partnership with that private owner to ever mitigate the blackberries?
Have not ever worked with any private property owners adjacent to Booth Kelly.
Does that somewhat strangle the flow of the water?
Well, I don't know if Booth Kelly, if that area is intended for stormwater management. I don't know that it is. It flows nowhere. So if anything,
There
it
was
would
the
be
culvert down there.
Yeah, but it doesn't flow to a stream that would flow to a river that would, flow away.
Doesn't
So-
go underneath the street and go continue north.
It's a lower elevation, I think, than that.
Yeah.
I mean, if it really filled up, to a certain level, the overflow would go that way. But probably the
Yeah.
majority of the residual stays there.
Yeah, all of that, Austin Abbey, Canterbury Slough is what that's called. That's all retention area or detention area,
Mhm.
to where if the stormwater were to start standing there, it would infiltrate into the ground before it would flow anywhere else to a certain threshold of storm. Like we built I shouldn't say the contractor built Covert Creek detention areas for, I believe, the 500-year storm. So those really deep stormwater facilities are built for the 500-year storm events.
So I think maybe to get vegetation management in Booth Kelly Swale is different than vegetation management in the Bruce Abbey swale. Those have gates. Those have four discrete cells that overflow from one to the other, and we can control how tall they are before they go down. And they cross the loop path as it turns towards bottom loop and dumps that way. So ultimately, if all four don't do their jobs individually or collectively, the remainder it would flow out that way. Some might turn and drop in to the Booth Kelly Slough. It'd be unlikely, it'd be a nominal amount. But Booth Kelly itself, the vegetation management there is predominantly, I mean, I think the conversation is aesthetic rather than functional for that area. We do have that area is part of parks. So the Bruce Abbey part is a stormwater facility, but once you get to Booth Kelly, that is a named park. It's part of the parks and open space master plan. Does that help? And I think the northerly section of that swale is the part that's more choked, with blackberry. And the southerly half has been somewhat, I would say, almost denuded. Probably is too much, depending on what your natural resource opinions would be on that. So treatments for that would be part of this management and maintenance plan. But Trails End, which we were talking about, Corey, is the large wetland area, and of course that has was improved, I think, by a grant in the first place, right?
Yep.
Parks and Rec grant. So that would be a likely candidate for a future grant to build on that. And it's always good to leave a few years in between when you ask for money. So, timing is kind of part of the game too. I think that one, we put an actual date on it because I think we both think it's a good candidate for another round of funding. It's pretty unique. It's got some, educational tie-in stuff. It's got a lot of different features than kind of a standard mini or neighborhood park development.
And I want to say that the design for that has been done.
Some conceptual at
Yep.
least, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we'd be in good position to pretty cost effectively apply at least. The rest of those are part of the master plan and they're just out there in the 2030 plus, which, a few years ago sounded like a long ways out. Now it actually isn't very far out. Yeah. And I did total these up and the boxes, it's not super intuitive, but I did boxes around the total per year. So if you look at the administration, general government, 28, 29 is a good example. 1, 2, 3, the fourth one that just shows that 260,000 is the total of those 4 projects for that fiscal year. And it just shows how much of a fund balance it would take if we were to actually do that, all of those projects, which means that even that is likely somewhat unrealistic. That would be, in a best case scenario, over half of our general fund balance to do that in 1 year. So it's pretty unlikely. So we may, before we get this to you for formal, that may actually be tweaked to spread those, because that just doesn't, it's a far stretch to think even as we successfully, build that balance and get to financial sustainability like the arrow, it probably wouldn't be prudent to to then go right back down to bare bones before we even see the benefits. But these do then total up by category. So 340,000 in general government is not a whole lot of money, but it's money that we don't have. Parks, that is a whole lot. The bottom one, the big loop path, and we have some U of O work helping us kind of look at the future of that. That could guide some incremental projects on here in future years based on what we get back from the U of O team and discussions through Park and Tree and back to council about some discrete subcomponents, because that's a pretty large general number and general description. And a lot of these are going to be determined by development activity as well. That really drives some of that. So we'll have some more conversations there. So transportation, the list here, we broke it into categories a little differently. I think it still has some work to do to make it, to maximize the understandability of it. But the goal is there is major capital, street reconstruction, and then you'll see further down major maintenance. And we sort of had these mixed together in prior years. And what Brian and I wanted to do with these is how we approach them are different. So major capital and street reconstructions, those often take more than our annual revenues. Those take a grant, or they take a MPO funding or something, or saving up for a number of years to do. So what we tried to do was show, and those take also engineering design. So they have 20 to 30% of the project is engineering design. So they're more substantial projects. So we put them in this category, and then did what year we think they would fit in. And then the major maintenance is a repeat. It's its own set with its own date ranges. And the goal is really to look at each fiscal year and say, can we do both with the funds we have in a year? Can we do the major street reconstruction projects we have listed and the major maintenance that we have listed for that given fiscal year? I think Brian and I have a little more fine tuning to do on that to be sure we can. And if we can't, we still want to put, this Locust project, if that's a successful small cities allocation, then we would definitely have the ability to do that and the maintenance project. So some of the major street reconstructions are subject, the timing is subject to successful funding. And if they don't, we move it. The fact that it's on here doesn't mean we're destined to do the project regardless. We will obviously always be coming to you with, hey, we have a funding opportunity. This helps, this funds this, and it accomplishes this, and our fund balances hold it. Generally, as we've talked about, transportation is a fund that is stable, 3 different revenue streams. We have a loan that's closing on halfway done. Only have 5-6 years left on that. That'll give us an opportunity, coming up in the next few years to look at what is a bigger swing at a larger project, or just double down on the small medium. So this is our take on wanting to ensure that we get some major maintenance work done, not just put all of our revenue opportunities into one large street reconstruction. I think that is great for the streets that need it, but it leaves the rest of the system really kind of woefully inadequate.
Question on that.
Yeah.
So distinction between capital improvements plan versus regular maintenance repair. So I don't see any seal coating or crack sealing on that. So that would just be in your regular maintenance repair budget would be a capital improvement. Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. And we've been too shy on that the last 2 years. We were really, we've struggled. We had projects that were taking kind of all of our allocation. I think we're going to try and develop a plan to get more back on track with that preservation work. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't live here. It lives in
the dig out of the swales.
What's that?
Like we talked last week, the dig out of the swales.
Yep. Right. Yep. So that's transportation. I think that's probably pretty executable. And I think we've organized the projects a little different. Maybe one that I wanted to call out that we added that wasn't in the last round is this Willamette Alley, McKinsey to Van Dyne. I think that is a well-used kind of commercial alley, most of it. And those costs creep really quick. You know, it's, oh, let's throw some rock, we'll grade it, 5,000. Well, really, it's not. You still need to worry about drainage, to reset sewer connection boxes. There's approaches when you get to the streets. So we wanted to formally put that particular project, because it's so heavily utilized. It's different than a operations and maintenance style work. I think mostly when we do alley work, it's just right out of the operations budget. This one is a little heftier.
That's the one that runs between the Grange and Dairy Mart.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
starting,
That's really well used.
yeah. And some people have helped us out, putting some pothole fixes themselves, which sometimes it is a help, and sometimes the material they use is actually problematic. But
Cover things up.
or they, yeah, we get the intention. It's not not intended to cause us more mess, but sometimes it does. But that also is a sign that it's, needing work. So that's what I wanted to call out. And I think we were able to cross off some items on this section as well as completed. So it's working.
We're
Water.
more likely to get them done if we write them down and
Yep.
track them.
Yeah, and we're really, again, trying to organize and be realistic, and then push our way through. If we can get to realistic and not lose sight of them, and push towards completion, that's really the only way they happen, or they just start lagging. So for water, we did a sort of the same thing. We broke it into parts. What is different here is we didn't break them into the fiscal year still flows all the way through top to bottom, but the categories, we have the stuff that's in progress, the Stallings Lane stuff that we're finishing. But the next fiscal year will have just a little bit left on the well building, that project. And then we are soon to get a response back of whether or not we're eligible for that extra $1 million from Business Oregon for the transmission line. So that'll come to council relatively soon. If we get that money and council wants to incur that additional debt, this is what it's on track for. If we don't want to take on that debt, if council decides not to take that extra $1 million, likely that item would go under the external funding required category down below, and we'd have to figure out when. The local funding rate revenue work, you see there's a year in between, and the idea there is because of number 7. Oh, I see my numbering. I did a lot of cutting and pasting and didn't redo my numbers. That's terrible. The water master plan, before we really get into knowing the order for our external funding, our big projects, those are going to really be informed by the master plan about what order we do those in. And those are the big hitters if you look at those dollars. The local funding projects are really water line replacements that are smart and necessary regardless of what the master plan says. There might be some, I think Brian is probably better suited than a consultant on the water line stuff to say probably what order, those are best suited to go in. And some of them will match up by, how much we have for funding each year, and how maybe their proximity, if they, if it's efficient to bid them at the same time, that kind of stuff. But generally, these are going to be done regardless, or need to be done regardless of what a master plan update tells us for the most part. So that's why we kind of separated these, and they're more doable projects that we can handle with our own annual fund balances. The bottom ones, as you can see, those are long range solutions to long range problems. They're not really right now immediate in front of us issues, but because of their high dollar amount, they can't be dropped off the list and not worried about.
Those are big ticket items.
They are. you know, the one that really jacks the numbers there, you know, that 9 million, the new water reservoir for 7 and the water line connection for 9. It's likely it's one or the other. It's not likely both. So that also is part of this. It isn't that we would have all of these and it would just be a matter of what order they go in. Some mean that we have to make a fork in the road and decide, and that means the other one goes away probably or significantly changes. So we kind of have two theories maybe working in here in this project list of, do we solve our needs through additional storage? Do we solve our needs through additional supply? And which one leads and which one is supportive? So that's,
And more information
Yeah.
is needed.
and
before we
that's
can
where
make
master
that.
plan stuff is essential. Yeah. Because we can't bring you good information without it, and you can't make good decisions without it. So that's water. So yeah, maybe just kind of an asterisk to not be too daunted by the 26 million. It's not really 26 million. But it's substantial, and it kind of always will be.
We'd have to have a lot of bake sales.
Yep. And then wastewater is pretty straightforward. We talked about this one recently with the Kennedy Jenks capacity update. We don't have any scheduled replacement of these, that 150,000 for membrane blowers, pumps, replacements. Those are, you know, this is sort of like a CIP version of contingency. It's likely that at the age they are now that we will have something in that category go, and that's more than a $5,000 or $10,000 pump that'll happen. So that's what that is for. And we had it in there. We haven't had to spend, when we can, we spend it out of operations and maintenance, and we don't touch capital. But depending on what breaks, sometimes it's capital. And we capitalize it and we use that category. The large one still needs some more kind of technical review, and looking at options is the Premier RV septic tank. It has quite a few issues associated with it and benefits associated with it. But that's again, 2 years out. And then a wastewater master plan update is somewhere in that 28, 29 range. And that would likely be, there is funding, usually matching type funds available for master plans. So we wouldn't probably bear that entire cost ourselves. But that I listed the total cost. And then the rest of that stuff is all asterisked as depending on what a master plan says and what order and how fast we grow, and, a lot of variables to what we need. I think that, we talked about it just the last meeting. What we really need to do in wastewater is not worry too much about the individual capital project. It's just knowing that we need to build the fund balance to have capital money available for soon to be coming capital projects, and which flavor they are is probably not as essential. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. What we don't have on here, and we won't when we bring it to you for formal adoption, is an equipment, a category for equipment and a category for stormwater. And the reason is we don't really have, we don't at all have a dedicated funding sources for those right now. So we've talked a little bit about equipment in some of the public safety support fee stuff that we're behind on the fleet for PD. We're not as behind on public works, but public works also has more expensive stuff, and it's not just the trucks. It's the backhoe. It's there's the dump truck, those kind of things. The scissor lift is really growing high on the list for functionality. So and we got to figure out how we want to do that. Do we want to create an equipment fund, where we actually have a reserve fund that operates for all the funds to put into, and we budget it that way? What's the structure we want to use? So that's still TBD on creating kind of an equipment and fleet category on its own. And I think next year, depending upon council's decisions on non-revenue for stormwater, we'll likely have a category for storm next year. So just as a note, the transportation category that has all the street projects, that's really includes storm right now, because that's how we pay for storm water projects, is embedded. And most of the time they're connected to a street project. So it's not that we aren't funding it, it's just that we're funding it with street fund monies, not its own dedicated stuff.
Oh, lots of decisions.
Yeah, and hopefully most of this is stuff we've, at least the strategies are stuff that we've talked about and we'll continue to talk about when we talk about rates and we talk about budgets and all of that, and making sure that we're, we're aligned in the strategies we're imposing, because the best strategies are ones you stick to. The worst ones are ones you flip flop from. It sometimes works out, but you lower your chances of being successful if you flip flop strategies. The goal is to make sure we have a strategy that everybody is head nodding and sees it as the right way to go.
Lots of good information. Thank you.
All I can hear is cha-ching in my head.
Yeah, we were talking about that. I'm not sure if it was, I think in a conversation today, we were just talking about, the weird thing is the cities are here to spend money. It's what we exist for. We exist to spend money to provide the services and the infrastructure and the systems that the community wants. So it is weird. We want to save money. We want to, stock money aside, but you stock it aside to spend it. You just want to spend it as smartly and as efficiently as you can. And that's really the goal. But yeah, it's weird to have a cha-ching, big price tags, and wanting to spend is both, it can be taken good or bad, but that's what we're here for, actually. Yeah.
Well, there's only so far out that you can defer maintenance.
Yeah.
And I think that all cities have, all of us have you defer maintenance up to a certain point. What that point is and what you defer is up to individual cities and people.
I think it all depends on your level of deferred. Some cities defer by just, don't look at it.
Right.
Yeah. What we do here is we try and do the preventative stuff, even though it's, we know that deferring it down the road, but we try and maintain the equipment the best we can to make it last as long as we possibly can.
We appreciate that too.
We try. We don't always hit the mark, but we try really hard.
Always predictable either.
Right.
I mean, you can do as good a maintenance as possible.
Adam,
Katie?
there's nothing on here about street tree maintenance, installation, removal. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, operated, that's in the budget for operating budget. So it's not a capitalizable item. So it's not in a capital plan. It's in the operating budgets for each department. Yeah. And some of that would live in some of the parks budget, and some of it would be most of it would be in the street fund budget. Because that's where the tree fee revenue is placed, is in the street fund. Yeah, another inventory, another category of things that takes up time, effort, and it has risk and liability associated with it if we don't do it. Claims and damage and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, no shortage of stuff. And I think in total, if we look at our systems and where we are, there are there's only so much value in comparing yourself to other communities, but there is some value in comparing. And I think many systems, as Brian said, there are, other communities where not to, poke at them too much, but just the level of deferment and the level of maybe head in the sand, maybe not, maybe it's known and there's a conscious decision, but most of the time there isn't a conscious decision to wait. It's a hesitation and just kind of hope. I don't think we have that here. I think we have some that we clearly know need attention, and our local street system is one. And that's where we've hit on that strategy that we're trying to do for the next 2 or 3 years is tip the dial a little bit more to the major maintenance instead of the large street reconstructions, because I think that's where the majority of the community and I think everybody would say that's where we've most gotten behind, is really street surfacing on local streets. It's great when we're able to find funds and do a full reconstruction that solves multiple things at one swath. But the major maintenance category that we have in here now really is designed to say, we're gonna really work hard on catching up the road surface, and knowing that that doesn't solve all the drainage on that street section, or it doesn't solve maybe, sidewalks, or, all the other things that go with a reconstruction. And maybe it only buys 15 years instead of 25 years. But is that enough? Is the cost reduction by doing it that way, coming out when you do a life cycle costing, does it still come out well? And I think that's the approach we're trying to catch up on. That's probably the systems here that I would say there are the most deferred of everything that we touch. And that's really good. I think the other systems are and equipment and everything is, I wouldn't even call it deferred at all. We're in good shape. We can't let off the gas, or it just so quickly gets the way Brian described it. And that's operating budget as well as capital budget to help us get there.
I think it's always better, anytime proactive, it's better reactive. Having a person list and all that, it helps us. Making progress as a city government. It's more organized and putting things on paper, like at the beginning to the vegetation and something on paper, you look at it in a different way.
Yeah.
Or you see a pattern of that or appreciate all this work and all the
Good.
work, but that's analyzing. We at least know if there's something that is deferred.
Yeah.
We're aware of it. We're not hiding from it. Got it on our list. Let's do it. I like that approach.
Good, and I appreciate that. And that definitely is something we want to capture. And that's really what that administration general government category is all about. We know we can't fund it right now, but we can't pretend that, those aren't out there looming. And then there's other solutions to explore. When we have it down there, it isn't just to spend the money and do it. It's, are there other solutions, as Councilor Lehman brought up, that should be, discussed and looked at as a different way of solving issues. So yeah, I think getting them out there in front of us and being aware of them keeps them from dropping too far.
Question on comment. Neighbor, to get approached by a citizen on a public safety fee. Why do you chose to implement a fee rather than a levy election? Maybe just have a discussion about that way to respond to those.
Yep, definitely. Okay. We had that, the subcommittee, we had a lot of conversation about that, and we'll make sure that that's in our materials about the kind of the pros and cons of that tool versus the tool that at least is being, that is being considered. I mean, yeah, we could definitely talk about the retreat. I think, the quick answer, is that it's, well, I think there isn't a quick answer. Not with me talking. Yeah, we'll defer that. I'm gonna change my mind on that. Yes. Yeah. Yep. But it's good to know that somebody, the community is wanting that aware and wanting that information about the difference between the two. Mhm.
That could keep our capital improvements on our constant radar, because the second you let them slip, it can go really poorly, really bad. So it's good to keep them on the radar, even though we know that some of the funding might be off in the future. We need to keep them on the top of our mind, because the more we do that, the more proactive it can be, and that's a good thing.
good. Yep.
Thank you all. Nothing else, I will adjourn